Epilogue. World War I was still raging when the Icemen returned to England. Almost to a man, they joined their countrymen at war. Sadly, after surviving their ordeal in the Antarctic, several of the men were killed in action, among them McCarthy and Cheatham, two of the most cheerful and well-liked members of the whole group. With his cold weather experience, Shackleton was given command of a unit in North Russia. He took Worsley, Hussey, and Macklin with him. At the end of the war, life returned to normal, and Shackleton began a world tour, speaking to audiences in big cities and outback villages about Endurance's doomed voyage. He had accomplished one of the most spectacular feats of survival ever recorded, and he was celebrated on every continent. And yet, as always, it was the southern continent that called him. He had never been comfortable in civilization. He yearned for the frozen South again. In 1921, he gathered a crew together to return to the Antarctic on the quest. The goal for his voyage was to circumnavigate the continent and map all the islands that were still uncharted. At his side was Frank Wild, Alexander Macklin, Frank Worsley, James McElroy, Leonard Hussey, Charles Green, Thomas McLeod, and A.J. Kerr. They sailed for the South, but Shackleton's many years of exploration had finally broken his health. As the quest leaped forward over the waves, he began to look very sick. Macklin and McElroy, the doctors, tried to get him to slow down, but he was obstinate. At port in Rio de Janeiro, the boss suffered a heart attack and took to his bed. But he would not go home. The ship kept on south until it reached South Georgia Island. On January 5th, 1922, the Quest sailed into Grytviken Harbor and dropped anchor. As always, the air was filled with the smell of rotting whale carcasses and the sound of elephant seals bellowing and belching on the beach. Late in the night, with the summer twilight still brightening the sky, Dr. Macklin was called to Shackleton's cabin. Shackleton had had another heart attack. "You'll have to change your way of life, boss," Macklin said. "You're always wanting me to give up on things. What is it I ought to give up?" The one thing he had truly to give up was the Antarctic, and that he could not do. He died a few minutes after Macklin came to him. He was buried there on South Georgia Island. Here's to the long white road that beckons, the climb that baffles, the risk that nerves. And here's to the merry heart that reckons, the rough with the smooth and never swerves. From a New Zealand school song, one of Shackleton's favorites.